All right, well, thank you, Granny Kasparian, with you guys.
Grandma-ish.
Okay,
yeah.
So we're debating Anna's sweater, which we'll pick up in the post game. Grandma-ish or cute? And I posited blue or gold. Depends on your perspective. What was the words? Yanni or
Laurel?
Laurel. Yanni or Laurel. We'll discuss it in the post game. tyt.com/join to become a member. Get those scintillating conversations. Okay, fascinating day. Here's what I need you to buckle up for. I'm in a good mood. Anna is not.
No.
We're doing a little bit of role reversal today. It's Freaky Friday, but on Wednesday. And she is in an absolute rage over one story, which will spill over into many stories.
I had to walk up, like I got up from my desk and I had to go for a walk and do like deep belly breaths because of how much that story enraged me.
Yes.
No, I'm done. I'm done with the organization that we're gonna talk about today. Done. 100%. I am the EP of this show, and this show is not allowed to ever use this source as a legitimate news source ever again, period. No, I'm done.
You're crazy,
I'm done.
Doug. Okay.
We'll talk about it later.
So later in the program, Anna's done.
Yeah, I'm done.
I'm telling you, don't miss any part of this show. Okay, so that's later. But I will kind of halfway defend cable news, and then we'll rage. It'll be great. Okay, now my good mood is immediately going to be ruined by the first story. Let's get to it right away because there's a ton of news and this one's really important. And these stories do often ruin our moods immediately, but great work by the FBI. Anyway, Anna, take it away.
All right. Federal officials have foiled a terrorist plot here in the United States involving a self-proclaimed white nationalist who stockpiled weapons and planned on targeting liberal politicians and members of the media. Now, his name is Christopher Paul Hassan, and apparently he called for focused violence to establish a white homeland and dreamed of ways to kill almost every last person on earth. And this is according to court documents filed in the US District Court of Maryland. He was a former he is a US Coast Guard lieutenant, and he used to be in the military. According to, and what I mean by the military is he was briefly in
the Marine Corps between 88 to 93. He was in the Army National Guard for about 2 years in the mid 90s.
Yes, so according to the reports, he had been amassing supplies and weapons since at least 2017, developed a spreadsheet of targets that included House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and searched the internet using phrases such as best place in DC to see Congress people and our Supreme Court justices protected.
Wow.
To give you an idea of other people that he had targeted on that spreadsheet, the list includes Joey, what prosecutors say is a reference to former Senator Joe Scarborough of MSNBC, Cortez, I think we all know who he's targeting when he refers to Cortez, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Senator Blumenjew, as the spreadsheet says, presumably the US Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut.
So let's keep it real, guys. There's far more violence on the right wing. Anybody who tells you otherwise is lying to not hurt their ratings with right-wing voters. So are there left-wing lunatics in the country? I'm sure there are, right? And from time to time, very rarely they will pop up, like the guy who shot Steve Scalise, right? But is an overwhelming majority of the violence, the political violence in this country committed by the right wing? Yes, that's a fact. The ADL, Anti-Defamation League, just put out a report saying that every major terrorist attack that involved a killing in 2018 was done by a right-wing terrorist organization. Everyone, okay? So the right wing can then get all angry about that and stockpile more weapons, but that's a fact. The mainstream media can ignore it and say, well, I don't want to offend anyone, and the Republicans will yell at me and I might lose my Republican viewers. I got news for you, you don't have any of those anyway. Okay, but we're here to tell you the facts. So this is yet another time, another right-wing terrorist targeting liberals and reporters and journalists. And gee, I wonder who egged him on. So Joe Scarborough, I mean, this is hilarious that now that he's viewed as, since he attacks Trump all the time, he's now making it onto lists as a progressive to attack. He's nowhere near a progressive, but yes, he takes on Trump very forcefully. That's why he's probably on this list. Super obvious why. Richard Blumenthal, now that's a kind of random person to put on. Now, it might be that this guy's a neo-Nazi, a neo-fascist. That's certainly true, and I'm sure a huge part of it as to why Blumenthal is on the list. But also, Trump often targets Blumenthal. So if you're a neo-Nazi, you actually have many Jewish congressmen and senators to choose from. And it's such a sick thought that that's how people decide things, unfortunately, right? But in this case, Trump goes after Blumenthal for his record on Vietnam, which is, again, super ironic because Trump ran from Vietnam, did not go at all, okay, because of alleged bone spurs. But anyway, this is a who's who of Trump's wish list of people to murder. And Trump goes around saying, oh, well, the journalists, they're the enemy of the people. Hey, Christopher Hassan, aren't you gonna do anything about it? Now, he never names Hassan. He doesn't have to. It's called stochastic terror, where you encourage generalized violence and then random acts of terror pop up to meet your encouragement. And so, look, we mentioned the guy's name on the first day. That's our policy. Then we don't mention it. We try our best not to mention it going forward. But so we just found out about the guy. By the way, great work by the FBI in stopping this plot before he started executing it. And I'm sure looks like they were tracking it for a long time. One of the things they have to do in law enforcement is wait for some concrete act to take place so that you can convict them. Because what the defense will do is, well, oh no, he was just kidding about the Jews and the liberals and the traitors and the journalists, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why they wait for a specific act. In this case, on January 19th, he seemed to get more animated about this issue. He put together a list of, quote, traitors and targets.
He also stockpiled certain types of drugs, including steroids. And he had been reading what Anders Breivik had written. That was a terrorist who murdered 77 people in Norway. And he also stockpiled these weapons. So he had taken some actions. Luckily, the FBI had foiled this before he could actually cause harm to anyone.
You know, two more things. One about this, why arrest him now? He's also animated about defending Trump. And he was gonna act if Trump was impeached. Now, in a related or unrelated story today, the new attorney general is saying that the Mueller report might come out as early as next week. Now, if you're the FBI and you're tracking this guy and he's triggered by any attacks on Donald Trump and the Mueller report's gonna come out next week, this would be a good time to go ahead and get him, okay? Because you don't wanna wait too long because then he's gonna act on it and go get all the people on his list. By the way, I mean, get a look, and this is so spot on for how the right wing mind thinks. He thought, well, maybe I'll agitate Black Lives Matter to create even more violence because they'll be easily triggered into violence. You're the terrorist, idiot. You're the terrorist that is planning all this violence. Meanwhile, he's thinking, oh, Black Lives Matter, they'll want to do violence. No, the whole point of the group is to stop the violence against black people. This guy wants to start a race war and thinks, oh, I'll go get the blacks, they're the violent ones. While in the middle of plotting terrorist attacks.
You know what though, great thing that we instituted a travel ban on Muslim majority countries because we want to protect Americans from terrorists. And good thing there's this giant fight in government right now over building a giant hate monument at the southern border because we want to keep rapists and criminals out. Oh yeah, except we have a ton of rapists and murderers and terrorists of our own, many of whom go unnoticed. Luckily in this case, it didn't go unnoticed. But I mean, what about homegrown terrorism? I mean, we have that. Oftentimes it's not even referred to as terrorism because the person who would either commit the terrorist act, it doesn't have the right skin color to be considered a terrorist. No, this is insane. I mean, you know what he wrote about? In one of the writings that the FBI or the court filing mentions, he talks about the Charlottesville, Virginia hate march. And he said something along the lines of, you're not gonna get anything done with protests. You need targeted violence in order to get a point across. What's your point? Your point is what? That this should just be a white nationalist country and that's it? You want to murder other people? And why do you want to murder other people? Because you think the others are violent? Because you think the others are dangerous? He's dangerous.
Yeah, so we apparently threw bin Laden in the ocean because we didn't want him to have a grave, because we thought a grave might somehow mobilize radical Muslims into attacking more. It might become, but we leave out right-wing manifestos all over the internet that are encouraging race wars, terrorism, etc. Oh my God, but they're right-wingers. Rush Limbaugh would be offended. Fox News would be offended. Guys in red hats would be offended. So let's just, you can do whatever you want if you're a right-winger, okay? Now it doesn't mean you can do terrorism. That's why the FBI did a great job in stopping him here. But in terms of spreading the hate over and over and over again. So look, since 9/11, the overwhelming majority of the terrorist attacks in America have been right-wingers. You want to cry about it, that's your issue, that's your problem, okay, that's fine. You need a safe space from the facts, that's fine. I know your emotions don't care about facts, and I know that you get triggered easily, and you are more prone to violence and fear and paranoia if you're a right-winger. I understand all that stuff, okay? But they are still facts. And over the last couple of years, it's almost been exclusively right-wing terrorists. But political correctness does not allow us to call it by its name. And the reality is, it is right-wing leaders like Donald Trump that are egging these people on, and then they put together Trump's enemies list, and then go and think about how to murder them. And so that's what the bomber did, that sent all the pipe bombs to CNN, to Trump's political enemies, to Soros, etc. Here it is again. So I'm tired of people not calling it what it is, because they're so deathly afraid of offending the right wing, who are so precious and so fragile and so thin-skinned. So unlike the right wing, I will clarify every time, we do not believe in generalizations that because there are right-wing terrorists, that means every right-winger in the country is a terrorist. Of course not. We don't believe in profiling right-wingers. We don't believe in banning right-wingers. We're not idiots like the right wing who just categorize people and based on certain qualities. And by the way, being a right-wing in terms of ideology is definitely different than a race, a religion, etc. that you were born into. Okay, but all we're asking for is for law enforcement to do its job and to appropriate the right amount of resources to fighting right-wing terrorism. Do not ignore it. Do not get cowed by the loud voices on the right, because that is what happened under Obama and under Trump. They de-emphasized right-wing terrorism. Luckily, there's some great people working at the FBI that stopped us anyway. By the way, people that Donald Trump will turn around and attack tomorrow. Oh, the FBI, they're not doing anything. They do witch hunts. Was this a witch hunt? God knows. I don't know. Last time there was the neo-Nazis marching in Charlottesville, Trump said there was very good people on that side. I don't know if he's gonna think there's a very good person here. Is this another FBI witch hunt, Donald Trump? Was he just targeting the enemy of the people, Donald Trump? You're getting people killed. So media, do your job, call it the facts, don't call it neutral. And for federal law enforcement overall, yes, for God's sake, put in a lot of effort tracking right-wing extremists, not regular right-wingers or Republicans, but right-wing extremists.
Yesterday, let's move on to a new story. Yesterday, the New York Times published an explosive report indicating that Donald Trump was attempting to fix federal investigations in his favor. One of the bombshells that was reported in that piece was that Trump's lawyers were working with Paul Manafort's lawyers and discussing potential plea deals and whether or not Donald Trump would be willing to pardon Paul Manafort. Now, in response to some of the allegations in that piece, Donald Trump has come out with a number of whiny, childish tweets, which we'll get to in just a second. And he also denies the accusations in the article. Take a look.
Did you ask Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker to change the leadership of the investigation into your former personal attorney, Michael Cohen?
No, not at all. I don't know who gave you that. Just more fake news. There's a lot of fake news out there. No, I didn't.
So among other things that were reported in that piece was that Trump had asked his acting attorney general at the time, Matthew Whitaker, to have attorney Jeffrey Berman in charge of the investigation in the New York Southern District. And this was the investigation into the hush money payments toward women who Trump had sexual relations with while he's married, and in some cases while his wife is pregnant. And so he denies it, as you can tell, but he also says via Twitter that the New York Times reporting is false. They are a true enemy of the people.
And today, the FBI arrests someone who was planning to murder journalists who he considered the enemy of the people. Gee, I wonder where he got that idea. It's so hard to trace back. But you know what? Let's just call it even. Let's just call it even. You never know. I mean, I can't tell who's inciting the violence. Can you guys tell? I mean, when the president of the United States, with the full force of the United States law and power and weaponry behind him, says that in all caps that the New York Times is the enemy of the people. And by the way, also with his weaponized army of lunatics who follow him. Remember, he did the birther conspiracy. He believes in almost every conspiracy theory, Donald Trump does. And his followers are more likely to believe in conspiracy theories. And so he weaponizes them. I wrote about this. You know, it's interesting. I wrote an editorial about this just a week ago. We sent it to all the major newspapers, none of them picked it up. They're like, oh, right wing weaponizing their lunatics. Well, that would never happen.
No, I mean, if anything, that would make them want to hire right-wing Trump supporters as political editors for their news organizations, because that makes a lot of sense. You know, there's a shortage of trained journalists out there who actually have principles and have a conscience. So why not hire, Trump supporters and political hacks to go ahead and maybe attempt to make Trump like you? The mainstream media is pathetic. Anyway, let me move on to another part of this. He also claims that the reporters for the piece, which included Maggie Haberman, never even reached out to the Trump administration to verify some of these accusations. But Maggie Haberman did talk about this, and she says it's not true. Take a look.
We reached out to them on Friday. I sent several emails that went unanswered until yesterday. We went through a detailed list of what we were planning on reporting. They chose not to engage, and then afterwards, the president acts surprised. Now, whether his aides are not telling him what we are looking at, or whether this is a game and he knows what it is and he's pretending that he doesn't, I can't read his mind. But we certainly followed normal reporting practices and went over it at length with both the White House and Department of Justice.
Just to be crystal clear on that.
If this was news to them, it would be surprising.
Yeah, so look, we're constantly put in this awkward position where we have to talk about how the mainstream media, including the New York Times, does have a certain perspective. Now, they're maddening because they won't admit it. They have an establishment perspective. And part of the establishment is calling everything even. And so, hey, I got Republican readers, I got Democratic readers, besides which the Republicans yell at me all the time, so I'm just gonna call everything even, and that's maddening. On the other hand, do they go and make up stories? Of course not, right? Does their perspective sometimes color their coverage? I think it does. I think that on social issues, it is fair to say that they are more progressive. On economic issues, they are massively conservative, totally and utterly conservative. Okay, but those are legitimate critiques from the right or the left about the coverage and the perspective of the New York Times and other organizations. Calling them the enemy of the people encourages violence against them, and in spreading insane conspiracy theories about how they get together and they just make up news. That Maggie Haberman and the publisher Sulzberger and the editors, they all get together in a room. And what should we make up about Donald Trump today? Oh, I don't know. Let's make up that he told his acting attorney general to commit obstruction of justice and put a lawyer into the Southern District of New York to handle his own investigation. They're not gonna do that. You're an unbelievable idiot if you believe they're doing that.
No.
If you said they have groupthink and they generally believe that, for example, minorities should have civil rights, you would probably be right about that. If you said they have groupthink and generally think that raising taxes on the rich is a radical idea, you would be right about that. Anything that has changed, New York Times considers radical. Okay, that's an interesting critique. It is not endangering their lives. And that is what Donald Trump does every single day. Every time he puts out a tweet saying enemy of the people, he increases the percentage chance that somebody at the New York Times is going to get killed.
Can we just quickly discuss the fact that Donald Trump will go after any type of medium that criticizes him or critiques him or pokes fun at him in any way? So let's put the journalistic component of this to the side for a second and just talk about a non-journalistic component, late night comedy show, SNL. Donald Trump wanted to look into SNL, which does comedy and satire, because they make fun of him. So my question to Trump supporters is this: are you not embarrassed? Are you not embarrassed that you idolize a pathetic little crybaby loser like Donald Trump, who gets his panties in a bunch over SNL making fun of him? How embarrassing. It's embarrassing. If I, in some alternate universe, were a right-winger who had supported Trump in the election, at this very moment, I would be deeply embarrassed by how much of a child he is and how thin his skin is. So of course he's gonna go after the media when they do their jobs and they report the facts about who he is and what he's trying to do. Besides which, even if the New York Times wasn't reporting this, isn't it already abundantly clear through his own tweets that he's trying to influence these investigations? Come on.
Yes, and for those of you on the right and the left who say, well, Donald Trump, involved with Russia? Why would he be involved with Russia? Yeah, innocent people are constantly trying to interfere with their own investigations and pick their own prosecutors. That's what innocent people do all the time. Probably has no connection to Russia at all. Just totally made up. There's no evidence at all. Really? Really? Okay, so anyway, back to Anna's point. These guys, it's everything about conservatives is projection. Like, liberals love to get triggered. Your leader gets triggered at the drop of a hat.
He wants to look into SNL because they make fun of him.
You want to talk about triggered? You want to talk about needing a safe space? You want to talk about a beta? I mean, beta's too strong for Trump. He's an omega.
It is too strong.
And what does he do? Like all cowards, he says, "Well, I don't want to get into the fight, right? I mean, I got bone spurs. Oh, I got bone spurs, and incredibly thin skin, so I can't go into any fight." But you know what? Somebody should do something about the enemy of the people. And he encourages other people to take actions that are going to lead to violence. If you don't know calling someone the enemy of the people, especially when you're the president of the United States, encourages violence, either you're totally lying, you know it encourages violence and you're hoping somebody gets hurt at the New York Times, or you're the dumbest person in America. Everybody knows the president saying that is the enemy of the people encourages violence against those people. Everyone knows that. You would have to be so mentally deficient that the 25th Amendment should be used against you immediately by your own cabinet if you don't know that it incites violence. So here we are, and today another right-wing terrorist targeting journalists and liberals because he thought they were against Trump. Is it connected to his tweets? Goddamn right it is. Okay, let's take a break. And I said Anna would be angry, and here I am.
I am.
Okay,
I'm
wait till
back.
you get to her anger on the next story. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. Tomorrow, one of the segments that we're going to do is going to be members only. Again, members make this show possible, tyt.com/join. If you want a free week, just try it out. tyt.com/trial is the way to go. So tomorrow, not a whole hour, but one of the segments tomorrow will be for members only, and then we'll keep the show going throughout. So check that out tomorrow. And members, make sure you're watching on the member stream. And then we're going to cover the Bernie Sanders town hall on Monday. So don't miss that. Big portions of that obviously will be available to everyone. So instead of having the interviews and the post game in the third hour, we're going to cover the Bernie Sanders town hall. And then some portion of it, again, will be just for members. So tyt.com/trial if you want to try it for free. Now, let me go to our members for comments. Eclectic Miscellanea says, I bet if you ask 90% of the people, they would have absolutely no idea that there's been much more right-wing terrorism in the US since 9/11 than Islamic terrorism. The media, except for TYT, are not doing their job to let the American people know what the real threats to this country are.
Damn right.
And so, and this is the same failure that the media had before the Iraq War. They were too afraid to say that Saddam Hussein did not attack us on 9/11 because Dick Cheney would have yelled at them. And so what happened? 70% of Americans when we started the Iraq War, thought that Saddam Hussein had personally attacked us on 9/11. I mean, it's a colossal failure of the media. Why? Because they wanted to be neutral instead of objective. And now last two comments come from Twitter. Tom Zawacki says, okay, this is at least funny. Actually, let me save that one for then. Joe Oliver 44 says, I kind of wish Trump was a Democrat so he would have been kicked out of office by now. That's a good point. Because if he was, he'd have been a goner. Are you kidding me? 5% of what Trump has done would have gotten him impeached by Republicans. So God, the Democrats still, don't mistake their electoral victories for some sort of strength. Don't mistake the obvious easy wins they got as some sort of strength, okay? So, all right, it's another day. Okay, Tom Zawacki says, a former Marine who failed to use a VPN to hide his whereabouts and didn't clear his history, obviously not a TYT viewer. NordVPN.com/TYT. Okay, but not unless, but if you're a terrorist, don't clear your VPN, okay? Helps the FBI. Okay, all right, we got a lot more anger where that came from. Let's do it.
Okay. CNN has announced the hiring of a GOP operative. In other words, a right-wing hack who will not be a contributor, which is usually the direction that CNN goes in. No. This individual will actually be a political editor for the 2020 elections. Her name is Sarah Uygur, and I'm gonna tell you a little more about her. According to CNN, according to a CNN spokesperson, she actually recently worked as the Department of Justice's main spokesperson under then Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and she will coordinate the network's political coverage for the 2020 election cycle on TV and on CNN's website. So I just want to really emphasize, in case it isn't already very clear, she is going to have editorial control over the news content on CNN, okay? She is a political hack. She has referred to CNN as the Clinton News Network in the past. She has worked for right-wing organizations. She's worked for the RNC. She's worked for Ted Cruz, Carly Fiorina, Mitt Romney. Oh, isn't Mitt Romney running in an election? Not this coming election, but isn't he planning to run again in the future? Well,
he's a senator right now, and then he might run for president again because he's incorrigible, and certainly at a minimum will rerun for senator. Anyway, Ted Cruz is a senator, and so I'm sure she'll be perfectly fair in covering all this. Look, I'm going to jump in for a quick second.
Go ahead.
All right, now Anna's come.
She has no journalistic experience whatsoever. None. Zero. She's never worked for a journalistic organization, not once in her life, has no training or schooling in journalism whatsoever. Her entire career has been as a political hack working for other political hacks, right-wing hacks. And she is gonna have editorial control for what is gallivanting around town as a news organization. No, starting today, CNN is not a legitimate news organization. It is not credible. If these are the people that CNN hires, I'm sorry, you wanted to jump in, Cenk. I'm sorry for interrupting, okay? But yeah, you wanna be considered a journalistic news organization, you don't hire partisan hacks like this. And I would feel the exact same way if they had hired a Democrat who had absolutely no journalistic experience, but had a career being a Democratic hack or a left-wing hack, right? There are actual trained journalists out there, but instead of hiring them, let's go ahead and hire this rando, Sarah Uygur, who has no journalistic experience whatsoever. What is she gonna bring to the table? What does she bring to the table? Are you hoping that hiring some of Trump's cronies and some of these right-wing hacks, maybe Trump will stop attacking you so much? CNN's pathetic. Oftentimes, Cenk's the one who goes on these rants on the show, and I get a little uncomfortable, I gotta be honest with you. But you know what? No more getting uncomfortable. You're absolutely right. CNN is not legitimate at all.
Okay, now I'm gonna give you a couple sides here, okay? So we got a little fun role reversal here today. So on the one hand, I'll answer Anna's question. What's her role? Well, they're casting a soap opera. and she is playing one of the characters. So that's why I sometimes call the news anchors news actors, because do you really believe that those are the most qualified journalists in America? Or do they look a certain way? Do they have a certain point of view and a certain perspective? And is it used to create drama on air and conflict on air? And so that we all live this American soap opera. So the soap operas have largely gone out of business because we just made them real life. And the top soap opera star is right now the president, Donald Trump. And so when covering him, CNN treats it like the soap opera that it is, and they cast a bunch of characters. So she's been cast for this role. The fact that she's not a journalist is irrelevant for that role because they're casting. That's what it is.
You want to play your little drama games? You want to play your little soap opera games? Go ahead and do so by hiring them as contributors. By the way, that was bad enough. I've railed against the fact that they keep hiring political hacks as contributors so they can have this giant panel of crazy people yelling and talking over one another. But it's a completely different thing to hire a right-wing hack as a news editor, as a political editor for the upcoming 2020 elections. Has CNN not learned anything from their mistakes in the last election? I mean, again, pathetic. Pathetic. 100% do not trust CNN at all. I was willing to, hey, there's some shows, there are some breaking news stories that they managed to break that are credible and legitimate, and let's give them credit for that. But moving forward, I mean, the people who do the hiring at this news organization have completely tainted and destroyed the reputations of legitimate people that work on that network. If you're hiring nonsense people like this, no, Cenk, come on.
Well, you know who it is. Come on, let's be real. It's Jeff Zucker.
Yeah, Jeff Zucker. He sucks. He sucks because you know what? When you're making these types of decisions, people like me who teach journalism students feel like they're selling snake oil to these kids, right? Because journalism has been destroyed by the likes of Jeff Zucker. When you're hiring people like Sarah Uygur, and by the way, again, this is not about political ideology. I would feel the same way if you had a complete left-wing hack who has had no journalistic experience, no experience in the media to do the editorial component of this very important job.
Okay, but let me give more context because I don't fully agree with that, and I'll explain why. So to me, the problem isn't as much that she's a partisan. Unfortunately, that ship has sailed. Cable news is littered with political partisans. And in fact, they literally won't hire you unless you are one to be a contributor or an analyst. I mean, look at the people on the Democratic side. They're all Democratic consultants and lobbyists and former politicians. Gee, I wonder why there's no progressives on air. Because progressives didn't have a history of being sellouts in Washington.
Maybe progressives,
and that's the only way you could get on cable news.
Maybe progressives should just start calling the press enemy of the people and they'll start hiring progressives.
Well, there's actually a little bit of truth to that, and we're not gonna do that because it's not the right thing to do.
Of course.
But they do pander to the right wing because partly because they're intimidated by them. So now that's why I wanted to make a distinction between the right wing and the left wing here. So I don't, and I want to be clear too. I don't know if we agree or disagree with this, Anna, but it's to me, the fact that she worked in politics is not as big of an issue. So she called it the Clinton News Network. I don't care. They have all these things where she criticized Obama. I don't care. She's a Republican. Of course, that's what she's going to do, right? But there are a couple things I do care about. She said 92% of jobs lost in Obama's first term belong to women. That's an obvious, outrageous lie, thing that isn't true.
Perfect for
I don't know
CNN.
what her intent is there, but that's what, when Anna says hack, that is what she's referring to. People who purposely mislead you. I mean, who could possibly believe that in any economy, 92% of the jobs lost would be male or female? That's preposterous. It's a right-wing talking point mythology that was put out there meant to deceive people, but that was her job. Her job was to try to deceive people on behalf of the Republican Party. And no, tax cuts for the rich will help you. Now, look, you want to believe that ideology, that's one thing, right? But if you want to make up facts about Obama's economy, Trump's economy, that's another thing, especially if you're going to work in news. And then there's the hilarious hypocrisy. She once tweeted, Obama administration is the new Nixon administration when it comes to bullying, withholding info, and targeting enemies. How's that for funny? But she went to go work for Trump, who is the king of bullying, withholding information, and targeting enemies, and calling the press the enemy of the people. So I get it. They use these political figures as analysts and contributors. I think that's a terrible business model to begin with, because no American goes, gee, I wonder what a Democratic consultant thinks. Oh my God, Claire McCaskill, I respect her so much. What does that, a politician who's been lying to us for decades and decades think about it? Oh, MSNBC hired her. Yes, now I'm going to watch them instead of CNN. And here I'm criticizing all of cable news. So Fox News does it with Dana Perino and Karl Rove, et cetera. And so does MSNBC with Republicans and Democrats, CNN with Republicans and Democrats, et cetera. They never hire anyone for their expertise in news as much as they do for their so-called expertise in politics, but that's just a ruse to play this soap opera, okay? But I do want to give credit to Brian Stelter in a move that was unusual. He put out an article and a newsletter where he pointed out criticism, internal criticism of CNN while he works for CNN. So he pointed out that people were, one person said, quote, I'm really, really worried about this. Another one said, this just feels like a disaster. Another one was concerned that, quote, we hired a former Trump administration official to help guide our coverage.
Good job, good job. Great move by you guys. By the way, one other thing that she did tweet about, she minimized climate change, because all of that scientific evidence doesn't mean anything. These are the same people who think climate change is our biggest national security threat, so no, that was one of her tweets.
By the way, the people who think that climate change is our biggest national security threat is the Pentagon, the United States Department of Defense. So again, she should look into facts. But that goes to again, one last time, to the wrong standard that cable news has. Unfortunately, it's spilled over into other parts of the mainstream media as well. The right standard for journalism is not neutrality, it's objectivity, and there's a giant difference. Objective is, these are the facts whether you like them or you don't like them. Neutral is, I've twisted the facts to make them neutral to Republicans and Democrats so I don't offend anyone. So climate change is a perfect example. Now we've come to accept, and CNN has come to accept, well, hey, listen, that's the legitimate Republican point of view on that, so that's just their ideology and you can't criticize it. Wait. We have to treat it as legitimate. But 99% of the world's scientists didn't make it up. In fact, if you think about it for a second and you think the scientists from India, China, US, Russia, Brazil, et cetera, all got together and decided to do a conspiracy and change the actual temperature recordings, et cetera, and decided to blame it on man-made things because they don't like fossil fuel or they're gonna get whatever. You have to be a lunatic to believe that. And so we have the press as unfortunately legitimized and normalized literally insane conspiracy theories. And so now they've hired someone to be part of their political editing team. But again, I'm gonna give more context to be quote unquote fair, because that's what we do, we are covering the facts here. The fact is, she is not their only political editor.
Oh, okay, all right. That makes me feel a lot better. Okay, what other hacks have they hired?
Well, if this is their standard though, it does make you question. And so there are other political editors there. She will be part of a team, but she does manage people. And I want to give now back to Anna's point and another really important part of this story. And look, again, it's the decisions made at the top. A lot of people at CNN disagree with this, okay? But the devastating point made by one of them, again, why I'm giving credit to Stelter for covering it, is because he pointed out something I didn't think about in the beginning. They said, look, we have a lot of sources inside the White House. And the White House and the Trump administration were furious about those leaks, and they wanted to know those names. Now, she's our boss, and we have to tell her the names.
Yeah, great job.
And do you really think a Trump official that worked for Jeff Sessions and is a deep right-wing apparatchik, and I think that's a fair term in her case, never worked in journalism. She just worked for political purposes, et cetera. And she originally was against Trump, but she went and pledged her loyalty to Trump in order to get the job. Do you think she has enough journalistic credibility to say?
She has none. And just to your point about how CNN mistakes objectivity or neutrality with objectivity or objectivity with neutrality. No, they're not even neutral at this point, Cenk. This is a right-wing news organization pretending like they're objective, period. They are hiring. I mean, you're right in that they never have true progressives on, when they decide to fill their panel full of people who yell over one another. But more importantly, these are people behind the scenes. These are people who make editorial decisions about what gets covered, what doesn't get covered, how it gets covered. No, this is now a right-wing organization. If you have editors who are GOP operatives and only GOP operatives, that's the only thing that they've done with their careers, well, then this is a right-wing organization. It's not a news organization. It's not credible. I certainly don't trust it. And moving forward, I am going to be very skeptical of anything that comes out of CNN, period. Period. I don't care. I don't care if there are good people working there. I don't care if Brian Stelter did the right thing about talking about how some people are critical of it, okay? The fish rots from the head down.
And okay, one last example to back up what Anna's saying. She spread out the doctored videos on Planned Parenthood. Now, if she spread that and they're edited doctored videos, she never even apologized for it. I mean, she's gonna be in charge of a big part of a big news organization.
Not a news organization.
And so can we trust that the videos coming out of CNN are not doctored for right-wing purposes?
Nope, we cannot. Not a news organization.
And super last thing. Can you imagine CNN hiring a left-winger that had purposely spread false videos that were doctored in order to attack the right wing? They wouldn't come within a million miles of that. And they'd be so scared. And by the way, they shouldn't, okay? But on the right wing, it's accepted as, well, that's the right wing. That is what it is, okay? And they are legitimate and they should be covering the news like as if they care about the news, as if that's a priority for them rather than propaganda. So I think the critique is well justified here, whether you agree with the fervor or not.
Moving forward, if any of my students use CNN as a source in any of their reporting, I will fail them, period.
Okay.
No, I'm not kidding.
Wouldn't go that far.
No, I'm gonna be absolutely clear with my students. I'm gonna be clear with this audience. I'm gonna be clear with the producers here. Moving forward, CNN is not a legitimate news source. If these are the people that they're hiring to make editorial decisions, I have no reason to believe that their work is credible in any way, shape, or form. It is an entertainment show, entertainment network, okay? They love their soap operas, let them have their soap operas. But I would like for them to stop pretending like they do news, because that is not what they do.
Okay, let's take a quick break. When we come back, Donald Trump is thinking of firing yet another person in his administration because of disloyalty. Unbelievable. Can't wait to see how Sarah Uygur is going to cover that on CNN. All right, we'll be right back.